We may be looking at this, but instead, let's go here. Dominican Republic. Okay, so take out your Minerva reading with a pen or a pencil and a highlighter if you have one. You're going to look to highlight areas where you feel Minerva is showing courage. I will give you hints during the reading. Part 1, the first page and a half we read in class, but listen again while you annotate and highlight areas of courage and anything else that stands out for you. So this is 1938, and if you look at the title, it'll probably mean more to you now after our reading. It's the word complications, which normally you think there's problems, but we also learned another meaning for that, which you'll hear as we go. First time I met Sinita, she was sitting in the parlor where Sor Asushan was greeting all the new pupils and their mothers. She was all by herself, a skinny girl with a sour look on her face and pokey elbows to match. She was dressed in black, which was odd as most children weren't put in mourning clothes. This mourning right here is mourning like a wake or a funeral, so she's wearing black until they were at least 15 years old. And this little girl didn't look any older than me, and I was only 12, though I would have argued with anyone who told me that I was just a kid. So again, this voice is Minerva talking. I watched her. She seemed as bored as I was with all the polite talk in the parlor. It was like a heavy shaking of talcum powder in the brain, hearing all those mothers complimenting each other's daughters and lisping back in good Castilian to the sisters of the merciful mother. Where was this girl's mother? I wondered. She sat alone, glaring at everybody. Remember, we said glaring means she's kind of got a mean look to her. She's just staring at everyone, as if she would pick a fight if you asked her where her mother was. I could see, though, that she was sitting on her hands and biting her bottom lip so as not to cry. So even though she looks tough, Minerva's she's very observant. She sees that she's also trying not to cry. The straps on her shoes had been cut off to look like flats, but they looked worn out, was what they looked like. I got up and pretended to study the pictures on the walls like I was a lover of religious art. When I got to the merciful mother right above Sunita's head, I reached in my pocket and pulled out the button I'd found on the train. It was sparkly like a diamond and had a hole in back, so you could thread a ribbon through it and wear it like a romantic lady's choker necklace. It wasn't something I'd do, but I could see the button would make a good trade with someone inclined in that direction. I held it out to her. I didn't know what to say, and it probably wouldn't have helped anyway. She picked it up, turned it all around, and then set it back down in my palm. I don't want your charity. I felt an angry tightness in my chest. It's just a friendship button. She looked at me a moment, a deciding look, like she couldn't be sure of anybody. Why didn't you just say so? She grinned, which she smiled, as if we were already friends and could tease each other. I did just say so, I said. I opened up my hand and offered her the button again. This time she took it. So if you saw someone angry, would you go up to them and reach out to them in that way? Do you think she showed courage by reaching out to Sunita and offering the button? If so, that's something that you would highlight. After our mothers left, we stood on line while a list was made of everything in our bags. I noticed that along with not having a mother to bring her, Sunita didn't own much either. Everything she had was tied up in a bundle, and when Sor Milagros wrote it out, all it took was a couple of lines. 3 change of underwear, 4 pair of socks, brush and comb, towel, and nightdress. Sunita offered the sparkly button, but Sor Milagros said it wasn't necessary to write that down. So this is the line here that Kyrie mentioned in class today. So a girl says, "Charity student." The gossip went around. So I challenged the giggly girl with curls like hiccups who whispered it to me. She shut up real quick. It made me glad all over again that I'd given Sunita that button. So in this one paragraph, Minerva comes across a girl who wants to gossip about Sunita. And Minerva shuts that girl down, and she doesn't just go along with it. She stands out, and she says, so, like she knew she was going to back up Sunita. Does that show courage? Afterwards, we were taken into an assembly hall and given all sorts of welcome. Then Sor Milagros, remember this is a nun, who was in charge of the 10s through 12s, took our smaller group upstairs into the dormitory hall we would share. Our side-by-side beds were already set up for the night with mosquito nets. It looked like a room of little bridal veils. Sor Milagros said she would now assign us our beds according to our last name. Sunita raised her hand and asked if her bed couldn't be next to mine. Sor Milagros hesitated, but then a sweet look came on her face. Sure, she said. But when some other girls asked, the nun, she said no. I spoke right up. I don't think it's fair if you just make an exception for us. Sor Milagros looked mighty surprised. So she's looking surprised because this girl, Minerva, is standing up and saying, well, I don't think it's fair if you just do it for us. I suppose, being a nun and all, not many people told her what was wrong and right. Suddenly it struck me, too, that this plump little nun, with a bit of her gray hair showing under her headdress, wasn't Mama or Papa I could argue things with. I was on the point of apologizing. So she gets to the point where, oh, I spoke up, but maybe I should just do that with my mother and father. I shouldn't be doing it to this nun. And she was going to apologize, but then the nun, Sor Milagros, just smiled, her gap-toothed smile, and said, all right, I'll allow you to choose your own beds. But at the first sign of argument, some of the girls had already sprung towards their best beds by the window and were fighting about who got there first. We'll go back to alphabetical. Is that clear? So was that a sign of courage that she stood up and wanted it to be fair for all the students? If so, you're going to highlight that. Yes, Sor Milagros, we chorused, meaning they all said it at the same time. She came up to me, took my face in her hands. What's your name? She wanted to know. I gave her my name, and she repeated it several times like she was tasting it. Then she smiled like it tasted just fine. She looked over at Sunita, whom they all seemed partial to, which means all the teachers seemed to want to look out for Sunita, and said, take care of our dear Sunita. I will, I said, standing up straight like I'd been given a mission. And that's what it turned out to be, all right. I think Sarah Paul had highlighted this part. So the nun asks her to take care of Sunita, and she wants to remember Minerva's name because she thinks she's something special. And Minerva really wants to take on taking care of Sunita. Is that a sign of courage? A few days later, Sor Milagros gathered us all around for a little talk. Personal hygiene, she called it. I knew right away it would be about interesting things described in the most uninteresting way. First, she said there had been some accidents. Anyone needing a canvas sheet should come see her. Of course, the best way to prevent a mishap was to be sure to visit our chamber pots. And remember, we talked about chamber pots being the bathrooms then. Every night before we got into bed. So, any questions? So, she talks about girls wetting their bed at night and that they could use a canvas sheet. Any questions? Not a one. Then a shy, embarrassed look came on her face. She explained that we might very well become young ladies while we were at school this year. She went through a most tangled up explanation about the how and why, and finished up by saying, if we should start our complications, if we should start our complications, we should come see her. This time she didn't ask if there were any questions. And we talked about this being when a girl gets her starts menstruating, getting her menstrual cycle or period. So she calls it complications, and that was the name of this reading that we're reading.